Hey, what's up everybody? This is Ray. In this screencast, I'm going to introduce you to a popular server-side Swift framework called Vapor. Vapor is an open source framework created by Tanner Nelson and Logan Wright and allows you to create web apps or web APIs purely in Swift. It has all the features that you'd expect in a server-side web framework, including handling HTTP requests, routing, persistence, templating, authentication, and more. Finally, the community is quite active and welcoming, and at the time of making this screencast, Vapor appears to be the most commonly used server-side Swift framework. The easiest way to understand Vapor is to start using it, so let's get started.
To use Vapor, you need to have Swift 3 installed. If you're on a Mac, all you need to do is download and run Xcode 8 and you're set. If you're on Linux, you need to install the Swift 3 toolchain first, and those are the steps outlined in the Vapor docs here. I'm on a Mac and I already have Swift 3 installed. I'll check my installation by running the handy check.vapor.sh script. Alright, it seems to be okay. The next step is to install the Vapor toolbox. This is a command line utility that makes it easy to generate Vapor projects, deploy your code to a web server, and more. To do this, I'll simply run the toolbox.vapor.sh script. Next, I can see that this is installed correctly by running Vapor help. Now I'll create a project with Vapor by running Vapor new. I'll call this project Hello Vapor and switch to the newly created directory. Vapor is built on top of the Swift package manager, so you could build it with Swift build or through Vapor build, which is a wrapper around that. But personally, I find it easier to work with the Xcode project. That way I can see all my files and use auto-completion, which once you get used to it, it's hard to live without. To create a new Xcode project file, I'll simply run Vapor Xcode. To build it, I need to switch to the app target first and then build and run. Note that the web server by default runs on port 8080, so I'll open up a web browser and nice, it works.
The first class you need to understand in Vapor is Droplet. This is the class that you use to handle GET and POST HTTP requests, configure routes, set up the web server, and so on. It's pretty easy to use, so let's give it a try.
To have a fresh starting point, I'm going to delete all of the code in main.swift. Then I'll import Vapor and create a new instance of the Droplet class we spoke about. To run the web server, you just need to call run on the Droplet. But we want the server to actually respond to a GET request on the index. That's easy. Simply run drop.get and pass in a closure. The closure takes a single parameter, an object for the HTTP request. And you need to return an object that conforms to resource representable, which is a fancy way of saying an object that can convert itself into a response. Luckily, Vapor has made string conform to this protocol, so we can simply return the string hello Vapor. If we build and run, test this out on my web browser, it works. Often when you're writing a web API, you want to respond with JSON, and Vapor makes that extremely easy. Simply create a new JSON object, note that it can throw an exception, so we need a try, and pass in a dictionary of the data that you want to return. If I build and run and test this out on my web browser, we've got JSON. When you're designing a website or a web API, you often want different things to happen when you arrive at different URLs. For example, let's say we want to have something different appear when we go to /hello. To do this, we can simply pass in the path that we want to use as a parameter to drop.get. Let's try this out. And it works. You can also nest paths by passing in multiple parameters like this. And here's what it looks like in the browser. Also, you can configure paths that take parameters. For example, let's say we want to go to /beers/number and use whatever number of beers the user passes into that URL as a parameter. To do this, simply pass in your path as usual, but for any path you want to use as a parameter, put the type that you are expecting. In this case, we want an int, so we just put int.self. If we try this out, we see that it works, and even better, if we try to put something that isn't an int, Vapor will automatically detect this and throw an error, saving us from having to do that type checking. In addition to GET request, Vapor can handle all the other HTTP methods like put, patch, delete, and so on. For example, you can simply call drop.post, pass in the path you want to run this on, and pass in the closure as usual. To get a parameter passed in by the HTTP post, you can simply use the request.data dictionary. I'll access the name parameter here and convert it to a string using the .string property. Note that if it's not a string, this would return nil, so I'll guard against that and return an error if so. Now let's just return a random message, including this name, and build and run. I'll use the rested app to test out this post, and it works. Note that it works whether it's form encoded or JSON encoded. That's the great thing about request.data.
At this point, everything is working great on your local machine, but the whole point of using a web framework is to deploy it to the public. Luckily, Vapor makes this easy. Vapor supports easy deployment via Heroku or Docker. In this screencast, we're going to use Heroku, which is a platform that makes it really easy to deploy your apps. And the best part is, if you're just experimenting with things like we're doing here, then it's free.
First, we have to create a local Git repository and commit all our code. To deploy to Heroku, you need a Heroku account. If you don't have one, you can get one for free at heroku.com. Once you've done that, be sure to install the Heroku Toolbox, which is a command line tool to work with Heroku. You can do this at toolbelt.heroku.com. I've already done that, so I can test out my Heroku installation and log in on the command line. Now to deploy to Heroku, all I need to do is to run vapor heroku init. At this point, you usually have to wait a very long time, but I'll skip ahead, and boom, it's deployed. We can test this out by loading the URLs in a browser, and even have a beer to celebrate.
Alright, that's everything I'd like to cover in this screencast. At this point, you should understand how to create a basic Vapor app, how to handle GET and POST HTTP requests and parameters, how to configure routing, and even how to deploy your app using Heroku. There's a lot more to Vapor, including templating, persistence, authentication, and more, and I'll be covering these in future screencasts. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing your servers getting Swifty. I'm out.